Hi everybody, it's great to be back here again in Itamar. It is Friday. We are beginning the portion of Noah. We just began the book of Bereshit, of the Torah, a new cycle after the wonderful holidays that filled and recharged our batteries, and now we have to return to our routine. We are beginning our Torah study again, another cycle for another year. Let it be a blessed year for all of us, particularly for our friends of Itamar, our great, wonderful friends that have been standing behind us. I want to bless you all and wish you a great year of good health and happiness and prosperity, and let you all grow spiritually, and it should be a beautiful year for all of us. There's so much to talk about, and I don't even know where to begin, but I'd like to focus particularly today on a midrash. We know midrash is one of the four types of study of the Torah. The third level is midrash, which is usually story form, and our sages brought down all kinds of stories, but within those stories they have tremendous ethical lessons and moral lessons and so many different things they teach us through these stories. And of course there are different even other more deeper ways of looking at midrash. It's a whole beautiful study in itself. There are those who are experts on the midrashic side of Torah. It's brought down many stories in the Talmud of how particular rabbis, that was their expertise. They were known to be very, very strong in Agadah. Agadah literally means the midrash, right? But it comes from the word meaning to draw, because everyone loves learning midrash. It's interesting stories, and it draws the heart closer to wanting to know. And of course, through those stories, they teach you special lessons. And I'd like to open up with a midrash, which again relates to the in chapter 11, towards the end of this week's portion, Noah. It brings down the story of Abraham's father Terach, who had three sons: Abraham, Nachor, and Haran. Those are the three sons of Terach. And Haran, it says he died before the face of his father, meaning that he died his father's lifetime. And the question is why? What caused Haran to die? What is the whole story behind this? The Torah doesn't reveal us exactly what happened, but of course in our oral law we have traditions of exactly what happened and what led to this. But this midrash begins by the whole story of who Terach was, a famous midrash, who Terach was, and who was the personality of Abraham that was developing at this time, and of course his brother Haran. And through this midrash I'd like to learn a couple of lessons together. I think we can get a lot out of this midrash. Let's try to translate it. It's written in Aramaic. I'll try to translate it directly, even without reading the Aramaic, but just try to translate it. And it says like this. Midrash begins that Terach, Abraham's father, was an idol worshiper. And one day he had to go somewhere. So what he did was he placed Abraham in charge of the store. He had to watch his father would make idols and sell idols. So he placed Abraham in charge of selling these idols. And when a person would come and he'd want to purchase an idol, Abraham would ask him, "How old are you?" And he would say, 50, 60 years old. And then Abraham would say to him, "Wait a second. You're 50, 60 years old. You're not embarrassed to, you want to bow down to something like this?" And the person would actually get embarrassed. So wait a second, what is he doing? He's bowing down to stone and wood. And he would walk out of the store. So Abraham wasn't the best seller. He was the best businessman over here in this aspect. And he was basically convincing people not to purchase the idols of his father, Terach. And the Rash continues, Chad Zman Atat. I'm sorry, reading the Aramaic. One day a woman came and she was carrying a pinach, is a plate. She was carrying a plate of fine flour. And she wanted to do something with this to the store. She apparently wanted to offer this to one of the idols. So she says to Abraham, "I'd like you to take this and place it before one of these idols, this plate of fine flour." And what does Abraham do? He gets up and he takes some kind of like a hammer or an axe, and he puts it in his hand. And he breaks all the idols in the store. And then he actually takes this axe and he places it in the hand of one of the big idols that were made over there. And when his father comes back, Terach comes and says, "What's going on?" He looks at the store and he sees that all these idols are broken in half in the store. He says to he says he's looking at, of course, at his son Abraham, and in a very anger-burning eyes, "What's going on over here? What you do to my idols in the store?" So Abraham said, "I'm not going to hide anything for you, Dad." And then he says, I want you to know, a woman came here with a present of some kind of fine flour, and then the idols began to fight over this. They began to fight over the over this fine flour, and through the fight, the big guy, this big idol over here, came along and he started smashing everyone else up. And then what happened was he was the only surviving idol. Papa, they got into some kind of huge brawl over here, and so there's only one left now. So what does his father say to him? His father says to him, his father goes and responds, and he says, like to use the exact words he's using over here because it's very, very funny. I mean, it seems like, wow, what kind of weird story this is, right? But so, Amali mata mafle bivyadin inu. So his father says, what are you, like, you're a joke or something like that? Do these stones and idols know anything? You know? So right away, Abraham says to his father, "Look, listen to what your ears listen. Your ears should listen to what your mouth is saying, Dad." Anyway, Terach, his father, got very angry at him. So what does he do? He has a buddy named Nimrod, and he decides to give over Abraham to Nimrod. Let him take care of his son, who's rebellious and breaking all his idols. So what happens? He brings him to Nimrod, and Nimrod says, "Okay, I'll show you how to deal with these idols. Abraham, I want you to bow down to the fire." Because this fire was something that Nimrod apparently was worshipping. And Abraham says to him, wait a second, I have a better idea. Let's bow down to water, since water puts out the fire. So, you know something? Nimrod said, okay, that sounds okay, bow down to water. So Abraham goes on to say, wait a second. I think we should bow down to the cloud, because the cloud is where the water comes from. So Nimrod said, okay, do it. So then Abraham says, wait a second. I think we should bow down to the wind, because the winds can cause the clouds to disperse themselves. So then he goes, okay, bow down to the wind. And he goes on, and he says, he's starting to talk, and then wait a second, Nimrod stops and says, enough of this stupid talk that you're doing over here. Nimrod says, I bow down to fire. I want you to bow down to fire now. No, he says, you know something? No, I'm sorry. I bow down to fire, and therefore I want you to go into the fire. So Nimrod decides to take Abraham and cast him into the furnace of this burning fire. And here's the interesting thing. Now we're getting back to Haran, which we began with as well. And Haran is standing there. Haran, one of Abraham's brothers, standing on the side. And he says, if Abraham's going to win this battle, which means if he's going to go in the fire and come out of the fire alive and not be burnt up, then I'm going to follow his path. And he goes on to say, V'im natzach Nimrod. And he goes, but if Nimrod is going to win this battle, which means Abraham's going to be burnt up, then I'll go along with Nimrod. What happens? Abraham goes into the fire and he's saved from this fire. And this is a place called Or Kasdim, this furnace. And he says to him, now, who are you with? This is what he's basically asking Haran now. Nimrod's asking him, who are you with now? Abraham's saved from the fire. Who are you with? Are you with Abraham or are you with me? And what does he say? Min Avram Anna. I am with Abraham now. Haran says, wait, I see Abraham is the winner of this battle. I'm with him. So what does Nimrod do? He takes Haran, he casts him inside the fire, and then he's completely burnt alive, and he dies, and this is what it says, he dies in front of his father. So this midrash, which seems to be, on one way, a very, like a story that we always hear as children, and I remember being told this story as a young child, and we all learned about how Abraham destroyed all the idols, and the story of Haran choosing which side he's going to belong to, being neutral until he sees what happened, the outcome in the end. On one hand, it can be seen as a very, very simple tale, and talking about just trying to a nice story for children to get connected to the Bible, whatever it is, and etc. But of course, we have to realize that these stories, as mentioned before, contain within them tremendous depth. Tremendous Torah is hidden within these stories, and lessons that we can learn about life. And of course, this is all Torah. This is all what our great sages want to teach us when they bring down a midrash. Number one, which is not our focus for today, maybe more on when we get to Abraham, but there was, at this time of the world, don't forget the world was entrenched in idol worship. And in Abraham's house, his father actually was a person who was involved in making those and selling those idols. And you can see how in such a house, sometimes a person in such a dark world is able to pull himself and remove himself from that terrible uncleanliness and as we say in Hebrew, tum'ah, and able to get out of that. But we see here a struggle of light against darkness in the world. Abraham stands for the light in the world and trying to rectify a world so entrenched in idol worship. Even after the sin of the terrible sin of iniquity of the generation of the flood, here we are after the flood is over already, and still there's a struggle for where is God in the world, and now after the world has been cleansed by this flood, our rabbis teach us it's some kind of like a mikvah, like a holy ritual bath to cleanse humanity of the terrible iniquity. But still there was a great struggle going on to try to understand what is the right path to take in the world. How do we worship God? Where is God? This is something that Abraham, at a very, very young age, was involved in fighting against the world. He was on one side of the world, and everyone else was on the other side of the world, sort of stressing and fighting for idols where Abraham was against them. And here Haran, one of his brothers, they grew up together, brothers, right? He saw Abraham, he knew that Abraham didn't agree with this. But what he said? He said, "Listen, I'm going to be neutral here, and I'll see who wins this battle. Whoever wins this battle, I will take sides with the one who wins the battle." And great question we have to ask ourselves. It doesn't, what's wrong with taking a neutral side? What is the problem with taking a neutral side in this world? A lot of times people lack the knowledge and they're looking for the truth. So sometimes they're waiting for an opening, waiting to see who's right, and then they'll go with the side that they see actually wins the battle. And then they'll say, okay, something, maybe these guys are doing the right thing. They were successful. They had a blessing. They won. Why isn't the path that Haran shows a proper path? Interesting question. Why was he punished? Why did God allow him to be punished? Why did the same miracle took place, to Haran as took place for Abram? Abram goes into the furnace, and he's completely saved. And then Haran goes in and is completely consumed. Why? They both went to the same furnace. Why did a miracle take place for Abraham? And why was Haran killed? And the fact that he played this neutral game, was that the wrong thing to do? Many people, again, as I mentioned, many people in the world are looking for truth, and they're saying, they're playing the neutral game. Let's wait and see what happens. What's wrong with that kind of concept? In order to answer this question, which is sometimes irking me in a way, really, why was Haran so punished in that way? Of course, on one hand, we can say it wasn't a punishment. Let's begin with a simple answer, right? A simple answer is it wasn't a punishment for Haran. He died, yes, because we live in a world of how do we say, nature and natural circumstances, and not everyone has a miracle take place for him. And since Haran lived a life of, again, a regular life like anyone else, so the world for him worked in its natural way. And when someone goes into fire, you're going to get burnt, and you're not going to come out of that so easily. On the other hand, someone like Abraham, who was above nature because he, again, was going against the norm, fighting against that norm we see from destroying all these idols and fighting against all this, and someone who's going way beyond nature, and obviously he's going to live on a different plane. And Hashem he merited a special miracle took place for him and saved him. So it wasn't like Haran. You couldn't say Haran wasn't really punished, but those are the circumstances of someone who chooses to live a life in natural means, following your natural, rational, self, and not going beyond. That can be a way of looking at that as well. But it seems to be much more than that. It seems the Midrash, for sure, seems to be stressing the fact that Haran died because of the fact of his neutrality. And that's why, because he was neutral, why'd have to mention that fact, right? Because if he would have said right away in the beginning, apparently, I'm with you, Abraham, he probably would have been saved. But no, he didn't say that. So why someone who chooses in this world to neutrality until he sees what the right way to do, why is that a wrong path to do? That's an interesting question. I thought of an idea. As a matter of fact, I'll be giving a class. I give a class online once a week to a special group that requested, they're interested in studying Torah with me once a week online. We do it through Skype. We have already about 12 people. On and off, different people come It's interesting from different parts of the world, mainly the United States. We even have someone from Nigeria that joins us. Whatever it is, we discarded to discuss, and we're learning the book of Kuzari, one of the important works of a great rabbi named Rabbi Yehuda Levi. And I mentioned this book before. It's very important in that it contains within it very important principles of Judaism and faith. We learn from the book, and a great, gives a great, a backbone for our Jewish understanding of the different principles. And there, the book is based on a true story of a king that was an idol worshiper, and eventually he becomes Jewish, and his entire nation converts to Judaism. It's a true story. It took place probably around the year 600 or so, the 600s, and it's known, it's a historical fact, and the Rabbi Yehuda Levi builds his entire book using this as the framework for his book itself. And with the rabbi and the king have questions and answers. The king's asking all kinds of questions about religion, about Judaism and Torah, and eventually, after the rabbi teaches him different things, he converts to Judaism. Whatever it is, that's the story of the major story of the book. But it's so interesting that the book opens up with a dream that the king has, and he dreams every day that he's a king who's an idol worshiper. And he has a dream every day that your intentions are proper, you have good intentions, but your deeds are wrong, which is amazing. Number one, he's an idol worshiper, but we see right away he's related to it in a positive light. Meaning being an idol worshiper doesn't necessarily mean, you're a bad person. You're doing something wrong, of course, right? But if you're doing it with your heart and you really believe, with all your power, this is the right thing to do, so there's a virtue there. The virtue that's involved is that you really believe it, you're really completely devoting yourself, 100% devotion to that one thing, although you're on the wrong path and you have to get out of that, right? It's very dangerous to be in the wrong path. But the virtue there is that you are devoted and that you are giving everything you have for that particular thing. And that's what he was praised in that dream by the angel, saying, wow, you're doing something good, that you really have good intentions. You really want to serve, God, but unfortunately you're doing it the wrong way and your actions are not proper. And that's what he kept having this dream until eventually he discovers what the right path of worshiping Hashem is, what he has to do in this world. Now, this is, if you take this back, this concept, what I'm saying about Haran, the brother of Abraham, here we see something different. Now, if Haran would have, even if he would have chose the wrong path, if he would have chose to support Nimrod and the idol worshippers, and he was saying, I'm not with my brother, I believe in that stuff, if he went all the way, right, he would have been saved, right? Because he would have been Nimrod, he wouldn't have been thrown into the thing. And what interesting, his punishment came about by the fact that he was playing the neutral game, which means it seems to be that being neutral was worse than even going to the idol worshipping side. It's an amazing point they're trying to bring out in the Midrash. And why is that? Because when a person devotes all his heart and soul to something he really believes in, and even if it's something, and here's some interesting thing, even if it's something that is not the right thing to believe in, but there is a virtue there, that you're really showing you have tremendous devotion to what you believe in. On the other hand, if you're playing the neutral game, right, I'm going to see what's right and wrong, it's something that's showing there's a lack of how do you say, completeness or faith in what you're doing. It shows that, for example, when the person who's neutral game eventually, let's say, sees the right side, and then he goes, oh wow, this is probably the right side, I'm going to go with this side. He may tomorrow, because he's a neutral kind of person, doesn't have to devote others, to the end, he may leave that and do something else. But when a person is really strong in what he believes, and still so powerful in what he believes, and it's really hard to get him to budge and make a change, that's a great virtue. Because when he makes the change eventually, because he's an idol worshiper, he has to make the change. But when he does make that change for the good and he turns to the proper side, then he's going to be he's not going to budge from the proper side. He's going to take all that devotion and just turn it in the right direction. So that's a virtue, and that's a very interesting lesson that I think the Midrash is trying to teach us. Obviously, people in this world have doubts and are trying to explore and study things. That's fine. We have that. It's not going against studying and searching out and seeking the truth, because a lot of people have doubts in this world. But it's trying to show a side. On one hand, there's a very special side of someone who's very stubborn in his devotion, because that stubbornty is a good quality. When you eventually turn it to good and you get to in the right direction, then it could be a very good quality. And sometimes being neutral could be a bad thing. So I think that's a very important lesson And I hope I made myself clear what I'm trying to say in this particular point. But anyway, I did want to connect it and quickly end our lesson by the last part, which is also connected, I think, to this. The last part of this week's portion talks about Terach doing something very important. What does it say? Vayikach Terach et Avram beno, et Lot, et Haran, et Ben beno, ואת שרי כלתו אשת אברהם בנו, ויצאו איתם מאור כסדים ללכת ארצה כנען. It says that Terach, Abraham's father, started to repent. He takes his whole family, and their goal is to come to the land of Canaan, the holy land of Eretz Yisrael. But unfortunately, what does it say? Right after that, they came to what's it called? Haran, a place called Haran, which means, in Hebrew, interesting, it means anger. And they ended up getting stuck over there. And then right away it says, the days of Terach were 500, u'matayim shana. 205 years, and he died in Haran. He died in this place called Haran. So what is this? What is it trying to say? The Torah, why does the Torah say that Terach wanted to come to Israel, and at the end he ended up not coming, and he ended up dying? This is a very, very important lesson also in having to do with devotion. Very connected. When a person in this world, a lot of times we have a goal in mind, we have a mission in mind, we're desired to do something important in this world, but unfortunately, we don't go all the way. We're like right in the middle of something important. We're writing a book, let's say, give an example. You're working on something very important, a great idea, a great dream you want to make come true, and you're devoting yourself, but it doesn't come true. You don't do it in the end. Unfortunately, Terach ended up dying. He wanted to make this dream. He wanted to come to the land, but it didn't come true. He didn't go all the way with that dream. He knew it was the right thing to come to Israel. He's repenting. The same Terach who worshipped idols and gave his son over to Nimrod. Here we see repentance, but he didn't take it until the final extent. He never made it to the land of Israel. And this we have to think with this lesson to take in our lives. We can't be, if we're not, I call this neutral, being power up, just the same thing as Haram we learned about. You're not getting over, you have to get so excited and so full of energy to focus on the proper thing to do in this world. And with all your strength and might, go for it and do it. And you can't give up. You got to focus until it happens, until you make that thing happen. And that's also an important lesson in our lives. From here we learn that we have to devote ourselves totally to our goals and make them happen in this world. Well, I think our time is running out for this week's lesson. I really want to bless you all again and let us be devoted and to the land of Israel with all our hearts and souls and stand up for Israel and really show ourselves, show our commitment to God in its fullest extent. Shabbat Shalom, Besorot Tovot, Yeshurot v'Nechemot.